Welcome. Thanks so much for coming today. I really appreciate your time. This session is how to build resilience as a caregiver with traumatic lived experience. First things first, I really want to take a moment to celebrate you as a caregiver. You've made the decision to change someone else's life for the better. So thank you so much for being a caregiver, taking care of someone else. It really makes a difference. Take a second, take a deep breath, pat yourself on the back, give yourself a hand. You deserve it. All right, so who am I? My name is Sue Shaw. I have worked for 34 years with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I supported my father-in-law as he lived on hospice in my house for 6 months with liver cancer. And 7 years ago, my son asked me to take in a classmate who had been unhoused. He has complex PTSD. He had been labor trafficked and he was actively suicidal. So that is kind of who I am in a nutshell. Why am I here? Because I've learned a lot of things about being a caregiver the hard way, and I want to share some of those things, and hopefully they will help you today. All right, so types of trauma experienced by caregivers. Secondary traumatic stress or vicarious trauma is when you may hear stories of what's happened to the person you're taking care of. You may be spit at, kicked, hit. So those things cause trauma in you. As a caregiver, you may have compassion fatigue. You've done so much caregiving, you are just burnt out. You may also get to the point where you have symptoms of PTSD because of taking care of other people. About 59% of caregivers in our world have experienced adverse childhood experiences. That is abuse or neglect before the age of 18 that changed the way our brains developed, how we process information, long-term health. A lot of things, if there is no intervention, can change. And people who tend to have experienced trauma at a young age tend to be caregivers more because they want to change things that have happened to others. So they want to help people. All right, so how do you know if you have experienced trauma? I wanted to bring this up because honestly, I hadn't understood that I had experienced trauma. So as a young caregiver at the age of 23, I moved 3 people out of a rehabilitation center and into a house. And we were told the behavior would go away when we moved them. It did not. So I was a 23-year-old watching things fly through the air. I didn't know how to handle that. I didn't know how to make their lives better. I didn't know how to support the 8 other people working in the house. So I would do things like show up to work 2 hours early because I couldn't handle showing up later. And spend most of my weekends on the couch because I was completely exhausted. So what might you see if you're experiencing trauma? Difficulty sleeping, weight loss, panic attacks, nightmares, hypervigilance, and on the other side, numbness, avoidance. You may also experience health problems because of the stress that you're experiencing. So we talk about this because I want you to be aware that, yes, you may be experiencing trauma and there's some things you can do about it. So one of those things is your window of tolerance. So all of us have a window of tolerance. Our window of tolerance is where we are living our best life. We are happy. We are doing the things we want to do. And if you'll notice the 2 pictures I have of windows there, one of them is bigger, brighter, open. The other one's a little bit smaller. So there are days you may have a bigger window. There's days where your window may be smaller just because of how much sleep you got, etc. And how do you know if you're in or out of that window of tolerance? You may be overactive, overwhelmed, angry, frustrated, hypervigilant, which means you are on guard all the time. That's one reaction. The other reaction is numb, no motivation, understimulated, not interested in what's going on around you. So, and you can bounce back and forth between both reactions. Someday you might be in the middle of your window of tolerance and you get a flat tire, your kids are sick, something like that happens and throws you right out of that window of tolerance and into those reactions. But if you can be aware that you're out of those reactions or out of that window of tolerance and reacting to things, that's going to help you to be able to figure out what you can do to support yourself at that point. I know I am way out of my window of tolerance when I get hiccups very severely. It's that time that I need to stop dead and figure out what I'm going to do. All right, the other thing that you may have heard of is spoons theory. A young woman who had a chronic illness, her friend asked her what her life was like, and they were at a cafe, and she grabbed a handful of spoons and said, "You have as many spoons as you want, but I only have a few spoons each day, and it takes me a spoon to get up, a spoon to get dressed, a spoon to eat breakfast, and I've only got a few spoons left for the day, so I have to be really careful how I use my spoons." And I'm sure all of you have felt like there were days where you didn't have any spoons left, or you woke up with no spoons, right? So again, it's just a way to be aware of where you're at and what you have to give that day. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what happens when you're under a lot of stress. What goes up? Your heart rate, your blood pressure, your hormones. What goes down? Your decision-making ability, your seeing available options, and your ability to multitask. So if that's the case, then we need to really open up those options, right? Because if we are a caregiver and we can't see options for the person we're supporting or ourselves, then we're not going to be able to make good decisions to support them. And that's just going to continue to make things worse. So think about it as as stress goes up, you have blinders on. They get smaller and smaller and smaller. The more stress you're under, the less you can see of your world. And when that happens, you're not going to be able to support other people. So I like to think about if the person I'm caring for is in crisis, if they're having problems, if they're not able to see what's going on around them, where does that put me? Usually if somebody I'm supporting is in crisis, that means I am not in my ideal window of tolerance, right? I'm probably also escalated a little bit. And when I'm escalated a little bit, I'm not going to be able to see options for them or help them either, let alone myself. So I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to think about, okay, they're having a crisis. Whose crisis is it? Well, it's not mine, it's theirs. And why am I a caretaker? I'm their caretaker because I need to help them through this crisis. That's my job. So in that case, I can calm down, think a little bit. If they're really escalated and they're not a danger to themselves or others, I can give them a little space. And then I can start thinking about what are the options that are available here. The other piece of this is what kind of things trigger you. So especially if you've experienced adverse childhood experiences, you may very well be triggered with different things that happen, whether that's smells or actions, or if somebody yells at you, things that that person you're caring for may trigger in you. What do you need to do then to support yourself? Because it's going to throw you out of that window of tolerance. So do you need to go to the bathroom for 5 minutes and lock the door? Do you need to ask somebody else to come in and talk with you for a while, or make a phone call, or play music? You might have a dance party with that person you're supporting. Or do you need some physical activity? Maybe it's time to bundle up and both of you go out for a walk or run an errand, so that you can get what you need to support yourself, so that you're no longer feeling like you're in crisis as well, or that you're triggered. Okay, so we talked about how to build resilience. So these are some things that are really important when building resilience. The first thing, and always the first thing, are your basic needs met? Do you feel safe? So safety is one of those things that, can I tell you what safe is for you? Absolutely not. I don't know what safe means to you. I supported 2 young men who lived in a townhouse. It was no longer safe in that neighborhood. When we moved them to a ranch house in a different neighborhood, they did not feel safe, because even though the neighborhood was, quote, safe, the windows to their bedrooms were on the main floor and somebody could get in. Did it matter what I said safe was? Absolutely not. They did not feel safe. We helped them to move again. So what does safety mean to you, and are you safe? And if you aren't safe, what do you need to do to feel safe? So that's number one. Next thing to be resilient is connection to something, ideally to a person. And the first thing we do as we start to burn out is to take out extra things in our life. So if we're a caregiver and we're taking care of someone and everything else is overwhelming, we usually get rid of connection to other people. But connection to other people is what opens up those blinders, help us to see different people's perspectives, and helps us to see options. So we need that connection in order to be healthy. As a caregiver, we can't give that up. Now, that may look different than it used to. It might be a phone call, it might be texts, it might be limited amounts of time, but please don't give up that connection because of that caregiving responsibility. It will be a disservice to both you and that person. Positive experiences, we need them in our lives. And when we walk into a room as a caregiver, we have the ability to change that other person's experience for the day, including our own if we're in a nasty mood. So we need 3 to 11 positive experiences in our lives to be healthy, to be happy. And most of our society gives us about 16 to 17 negatives for every positive. So those positive experiences, those people that are positive, that build you up, make a huge difference in your life. Make sure you're getting those positives. Finding an identity or core, making sure you know who you are, because as a caregiver, a lot of times we give that up. We give up our own goals, our own desires in order to care for someone else. But once we start doing that, we lose ourselves and we're not healthy and we're not resilient. So make sure you know what your goals are. Where are you going? What do you want to do with your life? You're being empowered, you're in control, so that you can be a better caregiver for that person. And then consistency, just a regular routine so you know what to expect. That doesn't mean you can't change and have novel things, but just basic expectations so that you both know what to expect, so that you can help that person through their day. Is going to help support both of you. All right, so what does resilient look like for caregivers? I put together this star. Honestly, when I do this for people that we are supporting, I only look at connection, safety, and empowerment. But as a caregiver, I think boundaries are really important to add in. So in order to be resilient as a caregiver, I need to feel safe. I need to feel connection, ideally to another person, but a place, a purpose, a schedule, something. I need to be connected to something that makes a difference to me and empowers me. Empowerment, what does that look like? So how do I how am I empowered in my life? How am I going to meet my goals while supporting other people? And then boundaries. So boundaries are not something that you change. They're something that you set. All right. So I'm not going to expect someone else to change their behavior. I'm not going to nag them. That is not a boundary. A boundary is something I do because someone else did something. So my mom, when I was a little kid, used to set a timer for 10 minutes. She would say, I'm going to take a nap for 10 minutes. Do not bother me. You can watch the timer. You can play. Do not bother me for those 10 minutes. When that timer dings, we can do such and such. And so my brother and I would do whatever we needed to do. We would watch that timer. And when it was done, then we would engage again. So that was a boundary my mother set. It might be when I go into the bathroom, I'm going to lock the door. so that I have a few minutes to myself. It might be, when this happens, you are not safe, we are going to leave, and then you do it. So whatever that boundary is that you set, it is something that you change your behavior to support yourself, so that you are supported as a caregiver. All right. And how do those things remain balanced? You really need to think about that, because I might let up on my safety a little bit in order to take a risk so I can be empowered. I may make a boundary more lax so that I can keep a connection, because that connection is really important to me. But we want to make sure we're balancing those things as we go through. All right, now there's a couple tools here that I want to share with you. These are from University of Missouri, Kansas City, and they are for public use. And they say, yes, please share them. So this is called Charting the Life Course, is what the tools are called. And if you look up Charting the Life Course on your internet browser, it will bring up this site, and it will bring up these tools. This first one we call a problem solving star, or an integrated support star. And that is a star where you can put the thing that is you're struggling with right in the middle there. And then you can come up with, it gives you 5 options. So if you don't happen to have this paper, you can use your fingers if you remember the 5 categories. And it helps you walk through coming up with a solution. So like I said, when we're stressed, sometimes we put our blinders on, we can't see options. This helps us to open up and see other perspectives, other options, so that we can help. And you can do this with the person you're taking care of. They may come up with some good options as well. So you might put that problem in the middle. I don't know what I'm going to eat tonight. My personal strengths, I can drive, I know how to cook. Relationships, I can probably go get some food from my mother. Eligibility specific, maybe the person I take care of is eligible for Meals on Wheels, and they'll get their meal that way. Community-based, maybe there's a fish fry tonight, maybe I'm close to 9 Mile Garden and there's food trucks there. And then technology, I can use Uber Eats, I could have groceries delivered, I can look up a recipe online. So that gives me a lot of options, looking at my community, looking at what's available to me in order to solve my problem. All right, the other tool here that's really helpful is this life trajectory. So the top, what do I want in my life? I can fill out this box of what things I want in my life, and then what I don't want. So what it does, it helps empower me to see where I'm going with my life. It helps me to remember that I'm important. And by the way, you can do this for the person you're taking care of as well, because it may help empower them, and that may make your time caregiving with them easier. So what do you want? What don't you want? And then as you're doing that, look at this dotted line. If you do nothing, you're going to end up with what you don't want. So we want to use this line to get to what we do want. You may think of it as an escalator, or you can draw some stair steps on it. Put above it what steps you need to take to get to what you want, and put under it things that are holding you back from what you want. So things that you really don't want to be doing, but that you're doing in your life, but that are holding you back from getting to your goals of what you want in your life. And that life trajectory, again, helps you look at those options so that you're really aware of it. And this is not something that doing it once in your lifetime really suffices. In the organization that I work at, we do this a couple times a year, just to make sure that we are following what we want, and able to continue to get to the life we want, and not get lost in the life that we are so busy providing for the people that we're taking care of. And again, do it with the person you're taking care of. Let's make sure that you're meeting their goals, because they're going to be a lot happier as someone that you're caring for if you're looking at those things when you're supporting them. Thanks so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. I hope this information proved valuable.